Namaste Ji. Welcome to Freeing Up the Central Channel Pranayama Workshop. So, I wish I could see all of your faces. Hoping we can do that for a question and answer, and I invite you to please come to that, as well as practice this workshop or this practice. Hopefully you will take it on as your daily, or at least every couple of days you'll take this on as a ritual in your life, or something similar to it, hopefully too this gives you a taste of what the nervous system can feel when we work with this bridge, this breath. So this breath is like a bridge between so many things, but one of the bridges that they talk about is between yourself and the world, or the heart, mind, and the world. So it's a powerful practice. And I think it's important to begin with the fundamentals, which is going to be the belly breath. So I'm going to go through and just talk you through some things that we work with that are necessary to be happening in the body, even before we take on one of the breaths. Things like Mula Bandha, and what to do with the Jalandhara and the neck, and all of the quality of the body, all of these things. So it won't take too long to work through these things, but I think these things are incredibly important before you even begin altering the breath. Okay, so preparing the body. Part of this, even in preparing, helps to clear the nervous system so that you can receive this animating energy, this energy that animates the brain body. I'd like you to approach this very slowly and gently, and the interesting thing to do here is to approach it with no agenda. No agenda, right? So it's so much about staying with what's happening. Staying with what's happening. Staying with what's happening. Okay. So one quick thing to point out is that the difference between Hatha Yoga, or the asana practice, and pranayama, the seated, intentional work with the breath, I guess you could say they're both intentional. However, pranayama is you're just sitting down to work with the altering of your breath, is the kumbhaka. So kumbhaka is the retention of the breath. So even though in asana practice you might feel in a really sweet down dog, or the kurmasana, the tortoise pose, where you are deeply, deeply folded, and you might have an experience of retention of breath and even thought, like a quieting of the thoughts, that sort of thing. However, in pranayama, it is actually an aim in the practice to either retain the breath on the inhale or hold the breath out after you have exhaled, okay? What we're working with today is primarily retaining the breath on the inhale. Okay, so let's begin. I'd like you to close your eyes and soften the muscles behind the eyes. Begin to deepen your breath, so you're breathing in and out through the nose. Bringing your awareness to the pelvis and finding that the pelvis is seated comfortably on a chair or a blanket or cushion, so that the low body, the pelvis and the legs, are a little bit heavy, earthy. allowing the sitting bones to take root. And then while you're sitting, aligning the skull over the pelvis. Skull is over the pelvis. So the heaviness of the pelvis, the bones are dropping into the tissue. Kind of remembering gravity here. And then from that rooted quality, allowing the spine to lift all the way up and through the crown of the head. And with that lift comes also a feeling of relaxing and releasing in the shoulder girdle. So the back inner edge of the shoulder blades of the scapula dropping down toward the hips. The scapula are like wings on the back. Wings on the back. So that the bones again are dropping into the tissue. When you're deepening your breath, that creates a receptive quality in the tissue. Because the tissues are receiving, the cells and tissue receiving oxygen, like inviting release. The tissue is content. The bones are dropping in. And then from here, and this is an important cue, and I'd like you to have this happening throughout the entire practice as much as you can. Draw the back of your skull upward so that it feels like the chin is dropping down just slightly, but drawing the base of the skull back just a little bit. Draw the back of the skull upward and the base of the skull back a little bit. So it's a subtle form of Jalandhara Bandha. Relax everything in the face. Relax the upper and lower jaw. Always emptying the tongue. Empty the tongue of words. Empty the tongue. From the back of the tongue to the very tip. Space in the mouth. The back soft palate is actually blooming upward toward the pineal and toward the crown of the head. Soft palate heaving upward. Space in the mouth. And then finding Mula Bandha, so keeping the eyes closed. Mula Bandha conceals the downward flowing energy, the apana. Downward flowing energy is called apana. So to find Mula Bandha, we lift the perineal body, the center of the pelvic floor. So if you can imagine, just for a moment, two triangles meeting at the base. So one triangle is pointing forward toward the pubic bone, and one is pointing back toward the tailbone. And then these triangles are meeting at a certain point at the base of the triangles. So we're focusing on the common line where the two triangles connect. That is the perineal body. Treat this very delicately and draw that area upward. Mula Bandha. It's the Muladhara chakra. So over time, when you practice this, all the time you practice this, you'll notice the exhale actually hooks into this area. Very cool. So the exhale very subtly lifts the mula, this energetic seal, sealing the energy into the body, the container of energy. It's a temporary container, and we work with that. So practicing Mula Bandha without struggle is kind of a lifelong endeavor. So it's a practice that you muscularly move, and then eventually it becomes more natural and can be there almost all the time. So as often as you remember, unless you've mastered this, and it's possible you have, lift that center of the pelvic floor throughout the entire practice. So continuing to lift the mula, let's add Ujjayi breath. So to find Ujjayi breath, even if you're already familiar, maybe try this. Inhaling and exhaling through the nose first. And now inhale with the mouth open, and then halfway through you'll close the mouth. And then exhale with the mouth open, and then halfway through you will actually close the mouth. And this is a nice kind of fun way to find Ujjayi breath, or to teach it if you're a teacher. It's one of 1,000 ways. So it looks and sounds like this. So try that a few times first, and then eventually I'd like you to close your mouth, and it will feel like you're whispering with your mouth closed. It's sort of the sensation of whispering, but it also feels like you're breathing in and out through the throat. There's this feeling of a constriction at the back of the throat, at the glottis. So I'd like you to, when you feel ready, you can finish with your mouth halfway open, halfway through, and you can try this with your mouth closed. Lifting Mula Bandha. Drawing the back of the skull upward toward the sky. Base of the skull comes back slightly. Continue with these 3 practices. Ujjayi, base of the skull, and Mula Bandha. Remembering that everything you experience through your senses, all phenomena, are energy and form, and they are in constant transition. So pranayama is an awareness practice. It's attuning to the breath. And breath is ongoing, right? As long as we're here, like ocean waves, like muscles heaving up and down, spreading side to side and filling and emptying the lungs. And with this, the prana, the force, steeps in the cells. So when we're doing this in awareness and we're lengthening the breath, it can bring about a mental and physical space, feeling of space. Attuning to the breath can also clarify our relationship to other living things like other humans and this exchange that we have with trees and bumblebees and flowers. We're always in exchange with everything. So continue this breath for another 2 cycles, please. And I wanted to say that I'm not going to count cycles for you. For instance, inhale 2, 3, 4, that sort of thing. I want this to be completely free of tension in your mind, free of having to do it right, free of having to do it right. Okay, because that literally is counterintuitive to what we're doing. So we're looking for space and freedom in the breath, clarifying, right? And not adding or getting rid of anything either. So all of the breaths will be hopefully smooth and at ease, like seeping in a way. So feel free to open your eyes, and I'll talk a little bit about what's the next practice, and then what I'm going to do is talk you through it. And I don't want to say too much because I want you to be able to continue to use this video, and that could get a little too much. So let's begin with Kapalabhati breath. So it's a little bit of an energizing, but at the same time it's meant to clear and cleanse, right? So Kapalabhati breath comes with a long deep inhale and then a partial exhale before you begin. So there's a little bit of a getting rid of or clearing out of the lungs before you begin the actual snapping of the spine. So in Kapalabhati, the navel snaps back toward the spine. So we're going to do 3 rounds. Let's do 3 rounds, and you'll do maybe 30 to 50 to 100 snaps, right? So you can begin slow if you haven't done this before and continue slow. I'll go slow to fast each time just to give you sort of a range of how you can do this. And this is, you might just be learning how to get the feel of, it's like pumping the belly, okay? I think all of you pretty much know how to do this from the group that was going together, which was a pretty large group, by the way. So I'll start with that. So closing your eyes when you're ready, resting your hands to your thighs as you've been doing here, and finding all of that relaxed quality. And throughout this practice, the reason I taught Ujjayi is that it's actually what's happening. It's not a strong Ujjayi, but it's what's happening as you're practicing a lot of pranayama, especially in the Ashtanga yoga world, which is part of what we're doing here. So with the eyes closed, take a nice long inhale, exhale part way, and then begin drawing the navel back and exhaling abruptly through the nose. So maintaining Mula Bandha, maintaining the lift at the back of the skull. When you finish, you might retain the inhale just for a breath or two, or a count or two, and then exhale and relax for a breath or two between each kumbhaka or retention. And also between each Kapalabhati breath, and then inhale again when you're ready. Taking the last two on your own time. I'll leave plenty of time in between. After you have had your 3 rounds, please take your time. Always finish with the eyes closed, checking in. Be sure you're not gripping in the face and the head. Check in and return to Mula Bandha. Return to drawing the back of the skull upwards toward the sky. If you've lost that, it's easy to lose. So Kapalabhati lowers blood pressure, relaxes your brain, it detoxes the blood and lymph. And so by way of doing all of these things, it helps to heal depressive and anxious energy. It heals depressive, low, and then this restlessness, this anxious energy that comes in sometimes. Maybe it's there all the time. And then when you feel ready, let's move to the next breath called Anuloma. Anuloma is control of the out-breath. So essentially we are inhaling. Hands will rest to the thighs while you're inhaling. You're going to retain the breath for a bit. A bit means retaining it as long as it feels comfortable for you. You might hit an edge, which is fine. So retain it as long as it's comfortable and you come to an edge where you're like, okay, I'm ready, right? So that will sort of train the body to go a little bit longer each time you practice. Very subtly lengthening the time, right? So you will inhale, retain the breath, or have a kumbhaka. And then as you're exhaling, you're going to actually bring the hand into a mudra so that you're resting the tip of the index and middle finger toward the base of the thumb. It doesn't have to touch, but it can. And then you're going to cover both nostrils very, very gently, and it's going to be covering and holding them equidistant to the septum. Septum's up here. Equidistant to the septum as you exhale. So it will look like this. Inhaling. Retention. Exhaling. Okay. So let's begin. And I'm going to go through this with you, and hopefully our times are similar to each other. I will go through, say, 6 different breaths. So meaning 6 rounds will equal a series of breaths. Okay. So let's begin. Hands to the thighs. Inhaling when you're ready. Resting the hands to the thighs when you finish. Take all the time.